Good morning, Paddington Academy. This is Mr. Jones. Welcome to the first podcast of this school year. I thought I would begin this year by talking about something that has happened in the last week. In the last week, the countries of Europe have realised that the refugee crisis in Africa and the Middle East is a serious problem which they have to do something about. So what is a refugee? A refugee is a person who is forced to leave their country because of war or persecution. Last year, the two countries with the largest number of refugees fleeing from them were Syria and Afghanistan. We are used to seeing stories on the news about migrants trying to travel on boats to Europe or trying to cross the Channel Tunnel from France. But actually, most refugees are not in Europe. The countries that have accepted the largest number of refugees in the current crisis are actually Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Turkey has over 1 million Syrian refugees living in their country. There are 3 million refugees from Syria in the countries that border it. To give you an idea of the number of people these countries have taken in, you can now see a picture on the screen of a refugee camp in Jordan. Over 4 million people, a fifth of the population, have fled from Syria since 2011. It is not difficult to understand why Syrians have fled from their country. The government of Syria has targeted the population, including children, with chemical weapons and bombs. ISIS have taken over areas of the country and have murdered and tortured people too. Until recently, Europe has had very few refugees from Syria compared to the 3 million in countries near to Syria. There are only 150,000 Syrian refugees in Europe, and 85% of these are in Germany. So what has changed in the last week? Last week, shocking pictures were released of the body of a dead child who was washed up on a beach in Turkey. I'm not going to show you the pictures as they are upsetting for some people. Instead, I'm going to tell you the story behind them. The story centres around a 5-year-old boy named Aylan Kurdi. Aylan Kurdi was born in Syria in a city called Kobane. He had an older brother named Galip, who was 5 years old. After war broke out in Syria, ISIS moved into Kobane as it was on the border with Turkey, and they engaged in war with Kurdish fighters from Turkey. This is the house where Aylan lived with his family. His house was bombed by ISIS, and these pictures show their house after the attack. Fearing for their lives, Aylan's parents went to Turkey. They stayed here for 3 years, but Aylan's father's sister lived in Canada, and they wanted to join her there. Unfortunately, they were not successful claiming asylum in Canada, and in desperation, they paid a people smuggler £2,000 to take them from Bodrum in Turkey to the island of Kos, Greece, on a boat. The reason that this route is so popular is because it is a short journey from outside Europe to inside it. The boat that they travelled on was a rubber dinghy, similar to the one that you can see in this picture. It was overcrowded, and the journey was made at night, so there was less chance of them being caught and sent back to Turkey. Once the boat was in the water, due to the weight of people inside it, it began to sink lower and lower. Eventually, the boat began filling up with water, and it sunk. Aylan's father and mother desperately tried to save themselves and to keep their sons alive and above the water, as their sons could not swim, and the waves were very high. They fought very hard for their lives, like everybody else on the boat. Sadly, Aylan, his brother Galip, and their mother died from drowning. Aylan's story is a tragedy. A family who were fleeing persecution, desperate to seek a better life for themselves, ended up dying trying to achieve it. Aylan's parents were faced with a difficult choice, and no parent would put their child in the danger that Aylan's parents did unless they felt that they absolutely had to. Since Aylan's picture appeared in the newspapers, shocked citizens of European countries have started to demand that their governments do something to help the refugees. It is too late to save Aylan, but it is not too late to save the desperate people of the world who deserve our help.